Hiring signals can be very powerful if used correctly. In this video, we're going to explore how to find companies that are hiring for relevant roles for you so that you can reach out to their decision makers. So this is useful for you whether you run a SaaS, AI company, marketing agency, professional services, recruitment agency, outsourcing, whatever it might be. So we're going to explore this in quite a lot of depth. This is great for you if you're fairly new to Clay. You're going to understand how to start with a list of companies, find jobs at those companies, and then find decision makers at the companies that have jobs. We're also going to look at another approach that's going to let you find jobs regardless of the company and then exclude all of your unwanted companies. So we're going to learn a lot as we go through this about hiring signals, how to find the companies that have the most opportunity based on companies that have the most jobs that are relevant to you. And we're just going to dive in and get deep into it. So with that said, let's get started. Here we have a blank workbook in Clay. And as you see on the left, there are sources. So we have find companies, find jobs, find people. We can import lists from CSV, from our CRM. So we're going to start off with the most logical method, which is to start with a list of companies. So if I click on this, you are presented with search criteria that you can use to build a list of companies. So let's just put in some data. I'm going to say companies of 11 to 50 that are in the software industry, software development, let's say. And then the location of those companies, I'm going to just put California, because there's bound to be a lot of jobs there. So if we go cities, states to include, let's type California. And you can see that there are 9,313 companies matching this. So for the sake of this video, I'm not going to dive too deeply into all this, but if you're new to Clay, what you're going to want to do is spend your time to go through all of these. And you can type a word like soft and see all of the software related options there. You can type technology and see relevant things there. You want to spend time to familiarize yourself with all of the search criteria available to you. And you want to make sure that you use it to the fullest to try and build the cleanest list possible and exclude all of the crap. One thing to note when searching for companies is that a lot of companies, so all this data is coming from LinkedIn, either directly or indirectly. A lot of companies will register themselves as the industry that they want to target. So for example, a recruitment agency that focuses on the tech sector might register themselves on LinkedIn as a software development company, and therefore they might come up in your search. So what you want to do is exclude things like, for example, you want to just exclude staffing and recruiting as an example, exclude other irrelevant industries here, but you really want to leverage the description keywords to exclude. So staffing agency, for example, recruitment agency, recruiting agency, staffing firm, recruitment firm, all the permutations of that. So anyway, we have a list here, 9,300. You could save the search, give it a name, save it, and then you can browse past searches and be able to find those and load them up to save you tons of time. We're going to just click continue and import to a new table. So here we have a list of software companies between 11 and 50 people in California. Some of them must be hiring, right? Let's find out. So what we can do next, now that we have this table, is we can click add and we can search for a source called find jobs. So let's click on that. This does not cost any Clay credits to search. So as you see here, we have companies as one of the search criteria, and it has automatically selected our table, but it says 3,800. It should say 9,305. So let's clear this. Click here again and select the find companies table, select table. So now we can see that apparently there are 22 million jobs Actually, that's not true. Let's just see. Well, yeah, I think it's saying that there are 22 million jobs globally at that list of 9,305 companies. So we want to narrow it down. One thing we can do is click Show Details here and select a view. So select Default View. So there was a little warning there, and it was saying you need to select a view. So now that we've selected Default View, there are actually, okay, so the 22 million jobs was just globally in Clay's database. That's all of the jobs that they know about in the world. Now that we've selected the default view of our companies table, we can see that there are 6,406 jobs at those 9,305 companies using the LinkedIn URL. That means the company LinkedIn URL. If we change that company identifier to the domain, this number might slightly change. Looking in the top right corner of the screen, we can see huge anticipation. Okay, 144,000. So that's a huge discrepancy, right? So there's something awry. And what we want to do is probably think about why that might be. I see Microsoft and Nvidia here. Now that's strange because we selected companies between 11 to 50 people. So what's probably happened is Microsoft and Nvidia might have subsidiary companies that are popping up in our company search because they only have between 11 and 50 employees, but their domain is Microsoft.com. Possibly that's what's happening. So it's probably more accurate in this case, this time, to use the company LinkedIn URL as the company identifier. And now we have 6,406 jobs, which sounds more believable. Now, these jobs are all kinds of jobs. So you want to use your job title words to just narrow down to what you want. So if you're trying to find companies who are trying to grow, then there's a very high chance that they would be looking to hire salespeople if they are a sales-led organization. So sales is another one word, SDR is another word, BDR is another word. These are job post titles. So they're going to say things like sales development representative, sales development rep, sales development professional. So by just typing the root level keyword like sales development, it's going to grab all the jobs that have different variations of that. So sales is an all-encompassing root level keyword that's going to pull up everything. It might pull up sales jobs that use the word sales in the title that you don't want. For example, sales support is more of an administrative role, and that might not be relevant to you. So you need to just think through it and utilize the keywords to exclude. So, support, I might not want that. Administration, administrative, coordinator, coordination, junior, internship, intern, whatever it might be. There's loads. I encourage you to use Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini to just get comma-separated lists of words to exclude and include for your search, to just speed up the process and be a lot more thorough, and tell it that you want root level keywords that are going to exclude every possible variation of those job titles that you don't want to come up in your search or that you want to come up in your search. So another factor is location. We want to set this to be preferred locations. Like a company might be headquartered in California in the US, but they might be hiring for a person in a completely irrelevant country to you. So, for example, the Philippines or India or whatever it might be. And if you were to reach out to that company's decision makers in California and say, hey, saw that you're hiring for a sales role, they might just think, no, we're not. Or they don't even know that there's a sales role open in a completely different country. So to make it relevant and make it a signal that they're going to know about, you want to, set that. So let's put California as the place to include. And by including that location, we are automatically excluding every other location in the world. So another possibility, you can see there's 85 jobs here. Let's just put United States. So now that number 85 becomes 298. So, okay, you can see what's happening here. We have a list of 9,305 companies, but at those companies, we've only found 298 jobs that are in Clay's database, and all of these jobs are LinkedIn jobs. It doesn't include jobs on Google Jobs or Indeed or Dice Jobs or all of the other job boards. So just be aware of that. And it doesn't include companies' own careers pages. So these are just some random jobs. All I'm doing in this video is showing you basically how to do it. And I'm not going to spend time to refine this search. I'm just explaining the process of how you can find jobs at companies. So we're going to click, you could save this again, give it a name, save it for the future. I encourage you to do that every single time. And then import to new table. How are you doing? That is done. Here on the left, we have the source column. You can click on this plus symbol here to add second source, third source, and you can add up to 10 sources per table. So right now we have this search, and we see that we have the company name, job title, location, company domain, and the job LinkedIn URL, and the date when the job was posted. That's another thing you might want to filter on, is like jobs that were posted within the last month, or, you know, just to make the data more relevant. If you click on any row in the source column, you'll see all of the data points available in this JSON array. So we have company name, job title, location, company domain, job LinkedIn URL, and when it was posted. But we're missing other things. So domain is there. Job ID, I don't think we would need it. Location, we have. Seniority, you might want to use that. I'm not sure if it will have a seniority for every single job. Salary min and max, again, this might have the data for some of them, it might not. So we'll just add them in and see. Do we have the company LinkedIn URL? I see company domain and I see job LinkedIn URL, but we don't have company LinkedIn URL. So let's add that. Do we have the company name? Yes, we do. The employment type might be useful for you, might not be. We'll add it in. And then normalized job post title. Let's just make sure that it's clear that this is about the job post. Because we have companies, we have jobs, and we're going to have people. So you want to make sure that the data is, the column names are relevant to what you're looking at. Like, this is a title, what, of a person? No, of a job post. So you want to rename your columns to make it very clear, like this is a job location, it's not a person location or a company location. This is a job title, not of a person, it's a job post title. So you want to keep everything very clearly labeled. As you can see, some of the normalized job post titles are missing. Many of the salary min and max details are missing. I generally just don't rely on them. But anyway, so what we have now is a list of 290 jobs at a list of 9,304 companies. So a lot of these companies in this list do not have job posts that are found on LinkedIn by Clay. So we need to find a way to find out which companies have job posts and which companies do not have job posts. And ideally, we would like to know, of those companies that do have job posts, how many jobs do they each have? So in order to do that, we can use a feature in Clay called Lookup multiple rows in other table. I'm just introducing the concept. I don't want to get too fancy in this video with building out crazy things, but you can see here that unique identifiers that exist in both tables for the company are going to be the company LinkedIn URL and the domain. Now, if we filter on the domain, filter on this domain and say is empty, in this jobs table, we can see none of those are empty. So we can clear that filter. We can type link and say company LinkedIn URL is empty, and I bet none of them will be. Okay, so we can clear that. Same on the companies table. So name here, you want to just be very clear what you're doing. So normally I'll go through the companies table, and description, it's not a job description, it's company description. And I'll just add the word company to everything. Company location, country, domain, LinkedIn URL, company LinkedIn URL, not profile LinkedIn, not LinkedIn profile URL of a person. So I know that we haven't searched for people just yet. So, okay, let's use that feature and find multiple jobs at each company. So we're going to click on actions. We're going to type lookup. And there's a couple of options here. Well, firstly, you have all these integrations with other data providers. But we're going to type lookup multiple rows. And you see look at multiple rows in a table or look up single row in a table. In this case, what we want to do is pull all the jobs from the jobs table into the companies table that match that company. So let's do it. We're going to click look up multiple jobs in another table. Table to search will be our jobs table. And then target column, let's try with the domain. So we're going to type domain. That is the domain in the jobs table. And then you can choose equals or contains. So we're going to choose equals. And then you have to map it from the jobs table to this table. So which row value in this table are we going to map it to? So if we put /, we can select any column from this table. So I'll type DOMA and I'll select this one, domain. So what this is saying is from the find jobs table, use the domain in the jobs table and make it so that when it equals the domain in this table, pull it in. We're going to go save and run 10 rows. And we can see that only one of these companies has any jobs, and the company is called Swooped, and they have 74 jobs. And if we click on this, we can see the records. So this is each of those 74 jobs. And if we click on the little sideways arrow, we can see each job's information from the jobs table. Now, also, we can see the number of results, and we can add this as a column, and I'm going to call it number of jobs. So now it's going to say 74 there, and for the rest of the rows it's going to be empty. So now what we can do is run this column on all the other 9,294 rows and see which of those companies have jobs and which ones do not. The vast majority do not. Now you can see that this column is 20% done. We're just going to wait for that to happen. We can also see that a portion of it is red, which means some of these rows are having an error. This means, or they're failing. This means that possibly the domain is missing for a lot of these companies. So in this companies table, if we go filter on this domain, filter on this column, domain is empty, you'll see that roughly 15% of the list is just missing a domain. So when you do this in practice, what you would do is use Clagent to find any missing domains and then merge them. So you get your Clagent domain and your original domain, you merge them together to get your final domain, and then that's what you use as the input in your lookup multiple rows in other table to have a full data set, and it will be able to find more matches and help you to make more money ultimately. We're going to clear that filter, just pointing that out to you. This is 83% done. What we can then do is with our number of jobs, we can see here it says default view. We can actually click on duplicate this view, And then we can give this filtered view a name like has jobs or companies that have jobs, whatever. So there are no filters applied right now, but I'm going to add a filter and say number of jobs is not empty. And so now what we have is a list of companies that have jobs. And if we sort this 9 to 0, of course Swooped is at the top because they're just amazing. But we can get a sense of which companies are hiring the most salespeople. And so you could decide, how can I segment this or qualify these companies and decide which companies are going to be my top priority, which companies are going to be less of a priority. So your tier 3 least priority companies in this example are going to be all the companies that don't have any sales jobs right now. Your tier 2 might be all the companies that only have one sales role. So that would be from row 36 downwards. So Agile, Data Pro downwards, they all have one role. But my tier 1s are obviously Swooped because they're just amazing. Down to postsig.com. All of these companies have at least 2 sales roles. And if my focus is to target companies that are hiring salespeople, because it's a very good signal that they're trying to grow and they might need my outbound services, then this is great. I'm going to reach out to them. I'm going to find out who's their head of sales, who's their founder. I know that they're all small companies because when I set up the search, I said I want companies between 11 and 50 people. Therefore, reaching out to the founder, co-founder, CEO is all relevant. If they were 200 people companies or bigger, or even 100 people companies, and I'm reaching out to the CEO saying, hey, see hiring some salespeople, want to have a chat or whatever, then it's obviously less relevant to them. They've got bigger fish to fry. So what you want to do is segment those larger companies and maybe say, if the company size is 51 people or higher, maybe I'm not going to go after the CEO or the founder at those companies. Maybe I'll only go after the head of sales, VP of sales, head of business development, and so on. But if they're 50 or less, I'll say, yeah, let's try contacting the founder as well. Decide how you're going to segment this list. So tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, grade A, B, C, whatever it may be. And there may be more criteria that you use to validate a company or qualify companies, not just how many sales roles they're using, but I'm just exploring possibilities with you. We have a filtered view called Has Jobs, and what we can now do is search for people at this filtered view of companies that have jobs. So we're going to click Add. We're going to use the Find People source, and this time, when we scroll down to the companies section, it has automatically chosen our Find Companies table for us, but Show Details, we don't want the default view of 9,304 companies. We want to choose the filtered view called Has Jobs. And now we're looking at that list of 119 companies that have sales jobs right now. And we have company LinkedIn URL as the identifier. And there are apparently 3,729 people at those companies. Now, obviously, we don't want to contact everybody, so we need to just decide who do we want to contact. And so with the job titles, we want to maybe try things like SVP Sales, SVP of Sales, Head of Sales, Sales Director. And so you want to use Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT to just say, okay, my job function words are business development, sales, and anything else that it might be. And my seniority levels are SVP, VP, Head, Director, Chief, so Chief Sales Officer, Chief Business Development Officer, and say, give me the list, comma separated, of all the variations of those titles. And it will go, and you go copy, paste. Well, you check it first and then you copy and paste it. Then ask Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT again, what are the list of job title keywords that I need to exclude so I don't get the executive assistant to the CEO. So if you think about personal assistant to CEO, executive assistant to CEO, they have the word CEO in their title, but the poor girl is just getting spammed every day by cold emailers, and it sickens me. So you want to filter out assistant, maybe not executive, personal, and just be as thorough as you can with your exclusion keywords to just really dial that in and make sure that your search is on spec. Now, there's a very important feature that was recently added in Clay with all of this, which is the job title is similar to, by default, is similar to is selected. Personally, I like to use contains 6 people. Okay, great. So CEO, founder, and founder would include co-founder because we're saying contains co-founder. So now there's 182. Head of sales, do we have that in yet? No. Chief sales officer, and then all of the business development related words and, go to market, GTM this, demand generation, VP, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. So you put in your job titles, and now we have a list of people. Save the search, continue, import to new table. Now we have our people table. So we've gone from a companies list to jobs list. Then we've gone back and used lookup multiple rows in the table to find which of those companies have jobs, which of them have the most jobs. And then we've created a filtered view of the companies that have jobs and used that as a source to find decision makers at these companies. So now that we've done that, you see that we have the source column where there might be some details missing from these columns here, although I think they're probably already in there. You can add any columns that you need to, but also we have this company table data where this shows us company table data, such as company description, which we can now add as a column, and company LinkedIn URL, which I like to fix that part. For some reason, Clay separates words when it brings columns across from other tables, which I don't like. But I do like Clay, generally. Also, the number of jobs. So this is relevant. So we can go number of jobs. Here we go. And because we have this now, we can use this and say things like, hey, Sahil, I noticed that you have at least six sales roles open at Bravado. See, company name is not in this table. So let's click there. Company name, add to column, create it. Hey, Sahil, I see that you have at least six sales roles open at Bravado. Wondered if you want to be my client, and then you're going to close the deal. So anyway, this is just the sort of overview of the workflow in Clay, like how you can go from company to jobs to decision makers at companies that have jobs. All the companies that don't have job postings that are relevant to you, you could still reach out to them, but it helps if you can qualify them and decide sort of which ones are the most qualified, the grade A's, which ones are B, which ones are C, and maybe find other signals or traits that you can use to qualify them. So that is an overview of going from companies to jobs to people. But I want to show you another thing, which is if we create a new workbook, start from jobs. So when you start from a job search, if we click find jobs here and we don't have any companies listed just yet, it has some good points and it has some bad points. So the good point is that you can find any jobs out there at any companies. As long as the job exists in Clay's database, it's going to come up here, which can be more efficient because, as you saw in the last example, we went from 9,304 companies to, I think, 298 jobs. So there was 97% of those companies just didn't have a relevant job for us. And so another approach would be start with the job. The only disadvantage is that we cannot select company attributes. Like, we cannot say, I only want to find jobs that exist at companies that have 11 to 50 employees, where the company is headquartered in California. We can't do that. So this approach is going to be very messy unless you really dial it in later on. So companies here is just select your table of companies. We don't have a table of companies. So what we can do is say job title, sales. It's going to be ridiculous. Okay, 0.8 million. Then we have location. So let's put again California. So there's 44,000 sales jobs in California, but remember, they're at absolutely any industry, and they're at absolutely any size company. So what could you do? Well, we have job description, where you can put in job description keywords. So startup, start space up, start dash up, pre-seed. So all these words indicate that they are probably a small company. Pre-seed, as in the funding round, seed, funded. I don't know, I'm just winging it. Okay, you get the idea. You can use job description keywords to try and filter down and find companies where there's a high chance that they are a smaller company. Posting date is something I didn't cover. So maximum days since posted. We only want to look at, say, jobs that were posted maximum 30 days ago, for example. So there's now 617 jobs where without that filter, there were double the amount. And a lot of companies will just post jobs to just collect resumes over time and just get a sense of what's out there in the market, and they don't actually intend to hire right now. They're just collecting resumes. So by doing this, you filter out all those companies that have had jobs open for donkey's years. So that's handy. Let's import that into a new table. And I'm going to show you another technique that you can use to filter out or exclude all the companies that are just too big for you. So for your needs, what I mean by that is, let's imagine that, typically with outbound, you want to reach out to smaller companies because it's easier to reach key decision makers. Not always, but, generally the outbound crowd is reaching out to smaller companies. Sometimes they are reaching out to large enterprises. Kudos to them. Anyway, so we have here a table. Let's imagine that we only want companies that are maximum 1,000 employees. I don't know. We're focusing on just California. So what we can do is we have the company domain and we have the job LinkedIn URL. Let's see if we have the company LinkedIn URL. Yes, company URL. So let's add it. Let's call it company LinkedIn URL. And now we have company domain and company LinkedIn URL as company identifiers. What we can now do is build what we call an unwanted companies list. So we're going to focus on companies that are in California. So we're going to say location, states to include. We're going to say California. And then we're going to set the company attributes, especially the company size, to be, say, 1,000 or higher. So there's 7,051 companies in the database that are based in California that have 1,000 people or more in absolutely any industry. So you want this unwanted companies list to be as broad as possible, and we could actually seeing as it's kind of small, let's put 500 to 1,000. So now there's 12,000 companies there. Good. As you can see, Apple, Meta, Netflix, Cisco, this is good. We want to exclude these companies from our jobs. So we're going to continue and import to a new table. Now this is what I'm showing right now is something that I just thought of doing like in the last month. And I've been using Clay for almost 2 years. So you're really lucky to be seeing this. But this is really good for you to know that you can do this. So now we have, let's just rename this table and we're just going to call it Unwanted Companies Table because they're too big. And then we have our Find Jobs table. So now in this Unwanted Companies table, we have domain and we have LinkedIn URL. Rename this to company LinkedIn URL. Go back to your jobs table. And again, we're going to use Lookup. But this time, instead of Lookup multiple rows in other table, we're going to use Lookup single rows in other table. Single row in other table. Because we're just looking for one company at each of these jobs. So one company has many jobs. Each job only has one company. So we'll use Lookup single row in other table. The table will be our Unwanted Companies table. The target column, let's try company LinkedIn URL. Because all of this data comes from LinkedIn, usually every single company has a company LinkedIn URL, whereas sometimes, as you saw in the previous example, 15% of the companies did not have a domain. So let's use company LinkedIn URL equals, and then type link /link company LinkedIn URL from this table. And now we will save and run 10 rows. All that means is here, where a record was found, Vercel, that means Vercel is in the Unwanted Companies table because Vercel has a lot of people. So what we can do is add a column and call it Unwanted Company Name. And now we can run this on all the remaining columns, rows even. We now have a column. There's Stripe, obviously a massive corporation, Rippling, TikTok, DoorDash. This is good. So what we can now do is duplicate our default view. We'll choose duplicate view and we're going to say jobs at OK companies. That means not unwanted companies. It means wanted companies. So if we want to apply a filter, we're just going to say unwanted company, filter on this column is empty. Meaning the company does not exist in our unwanted companies table. So now we have 484 out of 617 jobs at companies that are okay for us to reach out to based on our search criteria. I think it's all of these jobs are at companies that are 500 employees or less. But there is one big assumption that I made, which you should be aware of, which is these jobs are in California, but that list of companies is in California. The problem is outliers. For example, what if there's a company that has 10,000 employees, but their headquarters is in New York City? Then they're not going to be in our unwanted companies list. So there are going to be some cases here where you're going to have unwanted companies in here that are too big for you. So even though we did that preliminary step, which filtered out about 20% of the list, we still want to qualify these companies that have these jobs. And so the way that we can do that is run Clayagent to check the number of employees at these companies, each of these companies. The problem is right now, you have a list where these are jobs. So Future Site Ventures, you can see that if we just sort this column A to Z, Okay, like Air Wallex, they have 3 jobs open. You don't want to run a Clagent step on 3 rows because you're just wasting loads of OpenAI tokens. So what you can do instead is go actions, send table data, and we're going to create a new table, and we're going to call this companies, or we'll just call it qualify companies. And we're going to send all the rows from this table to the new table, and we're only going to run it if unwanted company is empty. So click here and say only run if / unwanted company name has no values. So that's a run condition. Generate the formula, and there we go. Output is correct. Save and run 484 views in this rows in this view. And therefore we have our qualified companies table where we can now auto dedupe on a company identifier, which is going to be the company LinkedIn URL. So click on the cog down here in the bottom right and go auto dedupe rows, and we're going to select company LinkedIn URL. Keep the oldest row, and it shows us before we click save changes 198 duplicate rows will be deleted on save. So click that, and so now what we have is a table where each row is a unique company. So now we're going to say we've just saved Clay credits, basically not Clay credits but Clagent OpenAI tokens. I'm just refreshing my screen. It's taking a while. But you get the idea. What we can then do is run the Clagent step on each row, and it's only going to run once for each company. Okay, we're back. So qualified companies now is 286 rows, whereas the find jobs table was 484 rows. So we've saved about 1/3 of the credits we would have used if we run Clagent steps now to qualify these companies. So obviously you qualify companies on a range of criteria. It's not just based on employee count. You need to make sure that they fit your ICP based on many different factors, ideally. So once you've done that and you have your qualified list of companies, you can create a filtered view of the qualified companies, then do a people search to find people at those companies. This is just the second method that you can use to find jobs. If you want to do this in a more sophisticated way to be able to run it evergreen, then the table needs to be a lot more advanced than what I've shown you today. If you would like to find out how to do that and have me and my team set up custom workflows for your business that will run evergreen to bring in qualified leads for you every single day, then click the link in the description, book a time to talk with me, and let's see if there's a fit to work together. And I hope to speak with you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye.